The crypto market is about to enter its craziest phase yet, and I believe that a big part of this will have to do with Ethereum breaking the $5,000 mark, and from there on forward, igniting some sort of crazy altcoin season that most of us already kind of expect is going to happen, but a lot of people still can't fully comprehend or can't grasp because, well, it's been a while. Really, the last feeling of a proper altcoin season was all the way back, and I'm going to say November or so of 2024. Yes, we had some signs earlier when XRP, for example, went to 366, or some people said when Ethereum just now went to about $4,800, $4,900. But for the most part, altcoins really this season haven't gone on an astronomical run. They've done good. But there's the twist. Many of the altcoins are still not at an all-time high. And I believe that the main thing bringing us that craziness is going to be Ethereum. And so this is what we like to call the Ethereum waiting room. We're all like waiting for ETH to finally make its move because as that happens, well, most likely that's going to ignite everything. And so if you're wondering, what exactly can bring ETH that feistiness, that move? What's going to ignite it? Well, there's a multitude of different events that could happen, but in reality, it could also just be the snap of a finger that all of a sudden it happens. So, breaking it down, one of the most important events happening today has been the World Liberty Financial launch. It's basically Trump's new cryptocurrency. And the reason I say it's quite a big deal is because we expected it to siphon quite a lot of liquidity from these other altcoins and take it all up in it. Well, but as of this point, it's not really done the craziest of numbers. It's at 22 cents, which for pre-sale investors is huge. But for most people on the open market, it's what I would call okay. It's not that crazy, and I still expect it to make some crazier moves in the midst, but I believe that that's one of the main reasons the market is doing iffy right now, nothing too fancy. And to add on top of that, there's a few macro factors, one of them being that Trump now said India has offered to cut their tariffs to nothing, and basically more of that, just the macro side, for example, the rate cuts and all this, that could influence the entirety of the crypto market. But there's a little bit more of a specific whale thing I want to showcase here and talk about. Let me just quickly elaborate on what I wanted to say though. Over the past couple of days, the amount of articles coming out of old whales, let's call it Bitcoin OGs and massive Chinese whales, purchasing Ethereum at these current prices is pretty staggering. Now, over the past few weeks, I have stated that I think Ethereum right now is one of the easiest plays, which is why I've been adding a lot more Ethereum to my positions here. But it for the most part is just becoming crazier and crazier. Like the amount of ETH that they're purchasing at this point, and specifically because they're selling Bitcoin for it, is quite peculiar. We're talking about billions upon billions from people that already have billions of dollars. It's really an interesting change. It's an interesting feat. Now, I do want to say that just because they're quote unquote OG though, does not necessarily mean they always have done well. And one thing people like to say is when I talk about how I've been trading over the past couple of years, people say, oh, but you spend so much time, so you're bound to do really, really well. And I counter that by saying, well, if you really start looking into it, a lot of the plays have really just happened over the past couple of months, or in reality. If we just take a look at our bigger positions here, or the better game positions, I don't have Bybit open right now, so I can't show you, but a lot of the trades we've made, we even turned $1,000 into $70,000, $1,000 or $2,000 into $50,000. It happens with not that much, and potentially all this cycle. Nothing you're seeing here in these screenshots, maybe some dollars from the previous cycles have remained over, sure, but a lot of it is new. Even this, right? Most of these bots, the $250,000 we put in right now, has been put in over the past couple of months. And here comes the point. Even though some people have been in this space for so long, it doesn't necessarily mean they've made a ton of money, and it doesn't mean you can't still outcompete them. You know, of course, the biggest benefit you can have when it comes to all this is time. I have to admit that the more time you have in this, the easier, theoretically speaking, it does get. But I'll counter myself again by saying, even if you just went crazy over the past, for example, year, right? This showcases if you'd put $20 into the crypto market every day for a year, how well it would have done. You can still see, for example, $20 a day is a lot of money to a lot of people, sure. But the appreciation, it's kind of hard to really grasp until you see the numbers in front of you. XRP, for example, you would have put in, of course, a good amount of money still, $7,300, but it would have been worth over $16,000 right now. And again, we're talking over a whole freaking year. But then again, it doesn't really feel like XRP did the craziest of things over this year because it went from 50 cents to $3 something, sure, all the way back in 2024. But afterwards, it's not like it did something really miraculous. I mean, yes, we saw an all-time high, sure. But for the most part, it felt like the craziest opportunity to buy XRP was many, many months before that. So we're talking about before, let's just say January or so of 2025. So since right now we're already 9 months into this year, it's kind of crazy to me how you still could have been up more than 100% on that. And it made me realize, really, all I got to do for the most part is just lock in to my exec strategies. As I've been talking about, all I do right now is add more money to my trading bots. I've got one for Ethereum. I've got one for almost any single coin, ETH, etc. XRP, I meant to say Bitcoin. A link for 𝗂onex, which is the platform we use for these bots, is down below. You can see all the results of all my different bots, by the way, or see how much it's cashing out on a yearly basis, just looking at the percentages right there. It really is quite staggering how all these things have been doing. I'm sometimes still quite surprised by it. Having said that, it's really the only thing I'm focusing on right now in the entirety of the market, with a specific focus on just getting myself more ETH. Because even though I think coins like XRP and perhaps even a Solana will outperform it, it's just from the perspective of where we should have most in. I think ETH is the easiest risk-reward play. I just think it's the easiest gainer, and more importantly, there's a few different creators who've shared this, and I'll share my thoughts on it as well. Here's, for example, Miles, who said, I'm using the next month right here, which just now started, to scoop up some higher risk plays in preparation for the next quarter, next 2 quarters. A little bit less than 20% of the portfolio, but in the worst case, they go to 0. But in the best case, they do some crazy multiples when ETH hits new highs. Asymmetrical upside, what is your current low cap pick? My thoughts on this? Indeed, if Ethereum starts having a massive breakout here, even a tiny one of just maybe a 15%, let's just call it a 20%, would bring it above $5,000, which theoretically speaking could be the ignition that we needed to start a full-fledged altcoin season. Now, supposedly, the moment that ETH does this, there's still going to be more upside at the start for Bitcoin, at least if we want a longer sustained rally. But still, from almost any angle, it seems like from a risk-reward perspective, it makes more sense to go a bit crazier now on these coins rather than wait it out, expect another massive hit. Sure, another hit could hit the market, but the closer and closer we get towards the end of the year, the more risk I'm taking. And to some people, this may feel inappropriate. They may feel as if another massive correction is due, but I still say that from current prices, many coins still have a minimum of 50% upside before I get afraid or scared or whatnot. And so that's also how I'm playing this one, right? That's exactly actually how I'm going about this. And now, if we're talking about my bots, I've just been adding to everything. And that's really, in reality, all I'm thinking of here. So for example, if you go to the ETH bot, right now it's only about $150,000 bot, 30,000 times 5, but we got to up these numbers a lot, right? Because actually it was 20,000 before. I think I added a little bit a few days ago, if you guys remember. I think we upped it by about 50%. We should still be adding though, because the grids, and matter of fact, just the entire performance throughout has been absolutely staggering. You can see break even is about 2,900. So the new addition has been, actually average hold price is the one that's more relevant here. The average hold price is, I guess, because I recently added it like $4,600 or so per ETH. But right now, as we're at 4,300, I still keep looking at this thinking, damn, it's actually quite low still, right? And from risk reward perspective, even though when Eric Trump posted, the price went down from like 3,000 something, 3,000, let's say 200, all the way down to like 1,500. I still keep thinking, even if throughout that period, if I just kept adding, and that's again the same situation right now, look how good of a position we'd be in right now, right? As a side note, I will quickly say that right now there's also a pretty cool competition going on. I'll leave a link to it down below where you can basically enter, this is talking about bots, a competition between, well, depending on how many people enter, for $5,000 or so. You can see first prize wins $1,000, the 10th prize wins just $100, but say, still pretty good. Because if you think about it from a risk-reward perspective, if you right now open up one of these bots and it does do really poorly, theoretically speaking, right now the top 10 still has 2 losers in it. So maybe even if you don't actually end up doing well, you might still just bag yourself $100 because not that many people have entered. So link is going to be down below to the competition. Right now, the number 1 is actually in more than 1,000% worth of profit, which to me is quite crazy because even if you start looking at all my bots, he's outperformed even me. And that's my point that I made earlier in some of the videos. People will really make this their freaking thing and just do some crazy numbers, even better than me. But that's what I want. I want to give you guys the tools, give you guys some idea, and you figure it out for yourself because to me, it makes a lot of sense, especially when you start diving into it. But yeah, those bots are really amazing. Now, if we're talking more about technical analysis, I also, as you guys may have seen throughout the past couple of weeks, have one of my analysts post on Twitter almost every single day, just his setups and what he thinks is going to happen. He's been very experienced in trading for many, many years. And I'd say one of the most interesting parts about this is thus far how accurate it has been. And you could just keep scrolling back, keep clicking on the previous post to see the progression throughout this. And it has been really interesting, especially I wonder if anybody has been trading this way or has found it helpful throughout this time. And I also was thinking maybe I should start doing a bit more video content with the analyst here to give you guys, a little bit of information on it. Because for example, a few days ago, hey, I told him never lock in too much on anything positive or negative. Just give us your raw thoughts, because at the end of the day, that is more helpful than being a permanent bull when it comes to trading. Differently when it comes to mostly hodling and strategies of that sort. But he basically said a little bit ago when we're talking about XRP, let's see, for example, here when we were sitting at roughly $3, that it was going to be going down significantly, right? And that is at $3 in XRP. Then he made a little update saying again, well, you could just scroll through it. Here even at what? $3.01, $3.02. Just keep scrolling through and see exactly what he's been saying. It's been pretty cool. But once you break it down, you really start noticing again also that right now he's changed from negative to slightly positive, which is nice. But also you could have caught yourself a pretty nice move downwards if you were just following along. And well, I think maybe it's time to start posting more about that because it's been pretty cool to watch even for me. Because again, it's different when only I see it or a few team members versus when you spread it out to the entire world. And I'm thinking maybe it's also wise to put in a Telegram to get a little bit easier of a logbook or Discord. But it's also partially because I think it's quite fun if we have a place where a lot of people can share their own trades and results just to kind of see what everybody has been up to. So I'm thinking perhaps we compile that more in a Discord of sorts or maybe Telegram, but it kind of depends on what the people like. Regardless, getting back to my earlier stated topic, it was a matter of if you feel right now as if you're really behind or you've been in this crypto space too long but the numbers are not adding up, just realize that everybody works at their own pace. Nobody knows exactly when the market's going to hit hard. And there's two parts. One is people who basically peak too early. They go way too crazy and all of a sudden they end up not making a lot of money over an entire run because they really thought that this was the moment. On the opposite side, you've also got people who never commit. They never really think of the market's going to pop off and they end up with nothing in the end because they never really went for it. And I'm going to tell you that for most of these sessions, most of these cycles, I've been in both camps. On the one hand, you go a little bit too crazy when the market's giving you some signs. So you end up not really making the most out of it because you could have potentially bought an even bigger dip. While on the opposite side also, being a person that's too conservative, not going too crazy because you don't think this is going to be it. And when I look back, I kind of realized that I prefer to be point number one than point number two. Meaning I prefer to really give a little bit more steam than I think is appropriate. Why? Because generally speaking, as long as my positions just go underwater or down and I don't get fully liquidated, I don't lose all my coins or whatever, I don't really mind having to wait a bit more and not having the perfect entry. I prefer that when I'm so excited about the market over a few month span, a quarter or 2 quarters. Conversely to, on the opposite side, just not putting enough in, where I always have a lot of capability to buy that dip, but if the market does indeed double or sees those numbers like we saw with ETH here quite recently, that I'm not happy at all. Because I see a lot of people in the comments section, they're not happy with the gains they're making. And I think it's not because they don't have enough money, it's because they didn't commit hard enough. And here I sometimes see these articles, I sometimes see these posts. For example, one new account started with $1 million, smart trader. He grew it to 26.07 million in I don't know exactly how long. We can check it out, but you get the idea, right? What he's been able to grow it to. And I'm thinking, okay, he's got some massive cojones, not everybody has that, but you only need relatively a very, very small portion of the gains he's been able to make, right? And theoretically speaking, you could see it like $1,000. He was able to turn $1,000 into $26,000. Now, of course, it was not 1,000, but $1 million. But the idea is still the same. At 26x, how? Mostly just by being really freaking confident this market would go up. And as long as you've got a little bit of leeway. Well, thus far, it would have been pretty hard to get wrecked on ETH. So from that angle, if he was just, for example, mostly trading ETH and just kept on continuing the buy cycle, just continuing to stack more and more and more, yeah, it does make a lot of sense for him to do really, really well throughout this time, or the same for Solana. And that brings me to another point, which is thus far, eternal bulls have never lost just quite yet. And I still feel to believe today will be the day. Anyway, guys, I've left some links down below to 𝗓𝗠𝗧, the platform I'm trading the bots on right now. You can check it out. I've also got a tutorial for in case you want to learn more. Check out the first link to sign up and then the second link for a bonus. But there's also the competition link down below, which of course is completely free to enter. So check that one out as well. And if you're wondering what I think is going to happen to the crypto market next, just realize I think it's about to get crazy. And that's how I'm going about all my decisions. But yeah, that's about it for right now.